Hello, this is James St. James, and in this episode we're going to be talking about how I get my information. Join me on my journey as I integrate ancient and modern medicines to reverse engineer intuitive healing so that you can re-engineer your body and mind to live vibrantly once again. It seems like I get my information from the hardest way possible, in my perspective anyway. I'm sure that if someone else were in my shoes, that they would be able to probably pick things up a lot quicker than me, as I don't think I'm quite as smart as a lot of other people I know. But within the path that I have, I do my best to just make the information I have as simple as possible from a variety of sources. Originally, I started out in biomedical engineering from California Polytechnic State University in San Luis Obispo. And then later on, it led me to a Chinese school of medicine where I just studied briefly and met with a number of my peers, and was, in the short time that I was there, I would read their textbooks from the upper class people. And I gained a little bit of background knowledge, but it wasn't like an official program. And then after suffering a number of health problems myself, I started diving more into psychology, specifically in neurolinguistic programming and hypnosis. And then later, through many years in the medical system, trying to resolve my own health issues, I began studying a lot of medical research and scientific research, mostly from the journals of neuroscience. And that led me to eventually have a conversation with my doctor, where my neurologist told me that in the medical industry that there may not be anything that would help in my situation. And so he suggested that I seek alternative medicine. From there, I started studying more into Chinese medicine and also Ayurvedic medicine as well. So to help people who haven't gone through reading as many things as I have, I want to do my best to share the information that I gathered throughout my life that's been a huge help to me, and it's the information that I wish that I had many years ago. The unfortunate reality of the world is that there's a lot of information out there, especially when you talk about things like science, specifically medical science or psychology-based medicine, and then the entire internet itself. And for a lot of people, I think that they really just want to find a few key points of information that are gonna unlock whatever health issue that they have so they can continue living the life they want to live. And for me, it was really difficult as I was struggling there and suffering day to day, waking up in misery and pain every single day, going through and reading as many as a bunch of this neuroscience literature, trying to figure out my health problems for myself. But at the end of the day, no matter how much science I read, it wasn't making me feel any better. And so that's the purpose of this channel. The purpose of this channel is to say, okay, let's take the most basic elements of the human body, figure out how this thing was constructed, give you that information so that you can understand. It's like, okay, this is how my body works, and this, if I was to fix the problem, this is how I would trace it, this is how I would identify the problem, and this is how I would resolve it. And through that, it makes the process much more simple. And when the process is simplified, it makes it much more easy to obtain. And for me, it made me so much more hopeful that I would one day be able to resolve my issues, because I wasn't confused, but I had an exact plan, an exact strategy, and the motivation to be able to resolve the health issues that I was going through personally. Because of my involvement with Nootripure, the organization that I founded for mental health, it led me to research a lot into neuroscience, as well as Ayurvedic and Chinese medicine, because I hired a lot of neuroscientists, Ayurvedic doctors, and Chinese medicine doctors to help me with various projects. And they don't really speak the same language, so I had to really understand exactly what they meant and the components of the body that they were talking about, and then be able to translate something like wind moving through the liver to a Western medicine practicing doctor, which to them, you know, if wind is moving in your liver, it means that you probably need surgery. But in Chinese medicine, it just means that there's a viral infection. So things like this, it led me to not only reading through a lot of scientific literature, but also to understand the fundamental concepts that were trying to be conveyed through the ancient texts, such as the Ayurvedic text, the yogic text, and the Yellow Emperor's text, which is the basis of Chinese medicine. And then being able to translate those and figure out what does this mean in modern day science. Through that understanding, then I can get a more practical way of interpreting the human body and the human mind. After researching into neuroscience, Chinese medicine, and ayurvedic medicine, beyond my background in biomedical engineering, it led me to many countries throughout the world, and during my travels I encountered what we would call as an intuitive healer. These are people who are just born with kind of a natural ability to see the patterns in the body and be able to resolve issues pretty effectively. And you could think of it like kind of like those children who are just gifted at basketball and nobody knows why, but they're just really, really good even starting from a young age. And there's people out there in the world that are just really gifted at healing, but they didn't necessarily learn a technique or a strategy, but they learned it from their own intuition. They learned it based on what they saw. And for me to understand those kind of people, I started studying like alongside a healer in Indonesia and being alongside him. It wasn't that he could communicate to me exactly, okay, there's this pattern or there's this issue with the body. I would just only be able to see this is what he's looking at, this is the conclusion that he drew, and this is the person's issues according to that person and like what kind of medical diagnoses that person has had. And then from just inference, I can take the information and see what kind of patterns are being created from that. And that's what led me to create a different model for healing. For me, my own understandings of how the body worked in a more simple way, because healers don't have an expansive set of knowledge through years and years and years of curriculum and textbooks. And so they see the body in a really, really simple way. But I think of it like this. For me, it was a breath of fresh air because I had been reading, so many facts across so many disciplines in the area of science, medical literature, the ancient Chinese texts as well as the Indian texts. And I had all these facts swirling and bubbling around in my head. And when I met the healer, it just showed me that he was able to do something very, very effective, but without having all these facts or details in his mind, because he just saw something. And when the simplicity is there in his mind, it allows him to move so efficiently. The way I think of it is like a Kung Fu master. The novice Kung Fu person will be, throwing punches, and they will be using a lot of their energy and be doing things that may be not as efficient. And even though they have a lot of energy and they have maybe a lot of techniques, but the Kung Fu master is one who's just calm, who is centered. And in that situation, he feels fully in control. And it's not that he's going to use more techniques than the rookie, but he's going to use the one technique that makes all the difference. And that one technique, he's going to execute it in the most simple way so that the result is that he wins the fight. And to me, when I see a person who has a lot of knowledge, like many of the Ayurvedic doctors in India were very, very knowledgeable, but the efficiency level of a natural healer is they're able to do just that one move that makes all the difference. And for me, I was shown that there was like a different perspective when it comes to healing, because as humans, not everything has to be so complex. For example, there's a lot of studies on how much water we should drink or how much sleep we should get at night. But if you just let a child sleep, well, you don't even have to tell them anything. You just give them a nice comfy place and automatically they will get sleep. Or if you just ask them if they're thirsty, they can get water. It's not necessarily that a person needs to have billions of dollars of research and facts and key statistics in order to know how to maintain a human body. And this kind of was a little hard for me to accept in the beginning when I met my mentor, because his information was not logical. And for me, it's like I had so many facts, so many diagrams, so much anatomical knowledge, so much physiological knowledge. And I had to give that up when working with him. But also in the same way, I had to translate exactly what he's seeing, what he's doing into those anatomical and physiological and biomechanical principles so that I can break it down in a way that I can use the information and understand it for myself. So if we take basketball, for example, now there's the Harlem Globetrotters, which are the most talented basketball team in the world, bar none, right? And so they're very talented, but they can't win an NBA game. The reason why is because the NBA players, they just focus on practicing the basics extremely well. In basketball, there's generally like, I think, somewhere around 5 things. You run, you shoot, you dribble, you pass, you block. And if you can master those 5 things really well, you can win a lot of games. But the Harlem Globetrotters are so focused on how they spin the ball on the finger and how they can put it through their legs and do all sorts of tricks. Even though those tricks are useful, it wouldn't allow them to win an NBA game with the goal of getting the ball in the hoop. In the same way, if I had a lot of information about anatomy and all these areas of science, it doesn't necessarily mean I'll be able to create that effective change within the human being. And if I can't create that change that I'm looking for, or the most efficient path to that change, well then my knowledge at that point is just getting in my way and it's confusing me. Because I see so many options, there's so many possibilities, whereas a healer would see only one efficient route and automatically know it's like, okay, this is the most efficient route. And now, being with a healer, it's not that they are some kind of mystical guru or, like Jesus or something like that. It's just that they have a particular talent. Not that it's mystical, it's pretty much just like anybody you see with a particular talent, like Shaun White snowboarding or Michael Phelps swimming. These people are just extremely gifted at what they do. And to me, it seems magical, like some kind of like they made a deal with Harry Potter or something, got some magical skills. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to just practice and using their human intuition along with various aspects of their cognition, not just the logical aspect, but also the executive cognition and the intuitive cognition, so that they can accomplish, new feats for humanity that we have never seen before. And it's really cool seeing people apply that, not just to sports, but also to healing as well. And that's where, for me, it becomes really inspiring. And it's led me on this journey here in Indonesia to be able to learn how these kind of people, these more natural born people, are able to do the things that they do so well. Another really interesting place where I get my information from is actually the Bible. Now, I never thought when I was young that I would ever be reading the Bible. I came from a very devout atheist family. The Bible didn't really make sense to me, and in fact, it took me many years to even learn how to read the Bible, as I would just read it, but I wouldn't get the same amount of information out of it that other people were reading. So I knew that I wanted to put my judgments about it aside until I actually could understand it to the fullest ability, because I can't judge what I don't understand. And so when I did that, I spent 3 years actually learning just how to read the Bible. Because what I noticed is that I would read a sentence, but if someone who was really into it read a sentence, they would be able to get so many things out of it that I couldn't. And that's when I realized that a lot of the Bible was written in almost like a form of hypnosis, almost like a song where if you read the individual lyrics to the song, it doesn't really make sense. But when you listen to it with the rhythm and like the way the artist is presenting it, then each of the lines, it gives a certain feeling. And that is the premise of hypnosis, is when you're able to speak in a way that the mind understands, but not necessarily does the logic. So a lot of the Bible sentences are not, even the stories are not written logically, but they seem to be written with an overall picture creating methodology. It seems to work with the subconscious layers of the mind. And then once I was able to understand how the Bible creates these multiple meanings within each sentence, that I could start extracting the information out of it and then being able to correlate that to what I'm learning in terms of medical science, Chinese medicine, the electrical patterns through the body, the physiological principles, as well as the anatomy and the emotions. And then from that, being able to just fortify my understanding and reverse engineer the body. Because in the Bible, they give very specific wordings to things, like an emotion that someone feels, and they'll even start talking about how they cry and then the circumstance in what they cry, and they're very descriptive about these emotional words and then what it means to them. And also even they give anatomical references, whether it be the center of the hand, the person's neck or their liver or something like that. And to me, when they bring up an anatomical reference or an emotion, all these things, they have a lot to do with biopsychology and physiology and the electrical patterns that run through the body. The stories are a little bit like on the surface, super to me, like Game of Thronesy, like he stabbed this person, screwed that person, like, and got sent to hell. Like there's so many stories that the logic mind is like, okay, well, this is kind of weird. But from understanding the principles behind it, understanding the different layers, how it weaves in and out of the literal and metaphorical and also the spiritual and the actual world, then I was able to get quite a bit of information in terms of certain patterns that the emotions go through. So you can connect like this organ to that organ to that organ to that organ, and as well as being able to correlate the different electrical channels to the way that our emotions abuse them, or can like the emotional patterns that can disrupt the structural integrity of those electrical channels going through the body. There's a lot of aspects like this that can be interpreted from the situations that are presented in the Bible. So it seems to me that whoever wrote the Bible clearly understood how the body worked from a construction point of view. And so it seems really like an odd place even to me to get information from, but yeah, I figured I'd have to mention it because I do actually get a lot of information from the Bible as well. But the whole point of me explaining where I get my information from was to just show where I was before and the things that I studied that gave me a foundational knowledge for which I am very appreciative of and have so much respect for every single thing that I studied, every teacher that taught me, every person who wrote the textbooks that I read. And then eventually where I left off with that, as I don't really read so much medical literature anymore. In fact, I mostly read pharmaceutical patents these days because I find that it's the perfect intersection between biology, technology, and law. So it's a personal fascination. And I've moved on with where I've been studying from now, understanding more of the root basis of each of the medicine in the world, or the areas of study for each medical field. Then now going to, I guess, extrapolated layers to where I'm able to start connecting the information using spiritual text as well as just guidance from people who have more of an intuitive sense than I do. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter where I get my information as much as it matters how the information is going to make an impact in your life. Because even if you have all the right information, but you're not able to apply it in such a way that works for you, then what good is it? But at the same time, say even if you got the wrong idea or the wrong information from somebody, but you applied it and you use your own critical thinking to make it make sense for you, and you were able to cause significant changes and benefits within your body and your mind, well then, does it matter so much if the information's wrong? So rather than thinking, okay, this is wrong, this is right, not just with my channel, but everything you find on the internet, every textbook you read, every doctor you talk to, it's not about whether they're right or wrong, it's about understanding it for yourself and then not judging it, but seeing how can it work for you. Understanding this is what I'm going through, and understanding especially how the body works in its fundamental essence of its creation, so that it'll make sense, and then you can understand, okay, I'm a human being born on earth, this is my body, I need to take care of it. And then now you have the control, which allows you to take responsibility for your own physical being and your experience while you have time on this planet. It's the foolish mind that thinks information is right or wrong and spends time judging the information that they get. But from my experience, what the wisest people have done is they figure out the most efficient way to get to the end result that they're looking for with whatever information that they have. So as we gather information, whether it be from the internet, from someone we know, from a medical professional, that's just information that we gather, and it shows us different perspectives. And everything that I say, this is one perspective. And so I don't expect you to take this as some universal truth, as even my perspective is going to be evolving through time, as I'm going to be adding to it. I'm constantly learning new things myself every single day, and hopefully making it more efficient and more effective as time goes on. But for you just to take this information, it wouldn't be as useful as if you are able to understand my perspective along with every other perspective, and then just be able to see for yourself what makes the most sense. And more importantly, what you can use right now to get you out of the situation you're in, whether it be a health issue, a heart problem, or whatever it is that might be holding you back from achieving the lifestyle that you want to live. For me personally, I've went from living in the deepest parts of mental illness. Just real quick about my story, I never had a headache in my life growing up. I was just a normal suburban kid from America. And then I woke up out of a wisdom tooth surgery in college. And when I woke up, I was experiencing migraines, seizures, panic attacks, even hallucinations. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what was going on. At times I could barely form sentences. There were some days I couldn't even remember how to tie my shoes. My body became so weak that I remember I had to ask a 60-year-old lady this one time to help me carry groceries into the house. And for 10 years of my life, getting carried by my friends out of parties because I had a seizure and all these embarrassing moments, it was really a struggle to get through it. And the only thing I could think about every single day was that I just really did not want to live like this anymore. And there was a part of me coming from a Western medicine background where it's like I wanted everything to be science-backed. But I realized at the same time, science is a tool of exploration, and that it's just exploring at its own pace. But it doesn't necessarily mean that I should wait on that in order to heal myself. And the same thing that held me back as well was this mentality that I grew up with, was that I have my body and I also have insurance. And if I have insurance that pays the doctors should take responsibility for fixing my body or my mind or whatever in my being that I damaged. Once I was able to let those parts of my ego go and say, well, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to resolve the issues within me, and I'm willing to learn whatever it takes, and I'm willing to give up whatever it takes and take responsibility for myself. Once that happened, my life went into a completely different direction. And since then, I was able to make huge gains in my mental clarity, my vitality. I had a list of like 16 diagnosable mental disorders developed from various doctors that I visited. And nowadays, like my mental clarity, my stability, my emotions, they feel relatively unlimited compared to where I was before. And that's what allows me to speak in front of a camera and share about these things that normally I don't think I could have ever done before. But after being able to restructure my body and my mind into the way that I feel works for me, that removes all the obstacles from everything I want to do in life, well then, now I can do and live the life I want without having to wake up with that worry of feeling held back every single day, feeling like, oh, well, I'm not personable enough, or I'm insecure, or I might have a seizure, or so on and so forth. I mean, we all have our health issues. But then being able to take responsibility, have the framework and the will to be able to fix the damage that's causing those inhibitions in our physiological systems, in our physical body, or even within our mind, and to resolve those issues quickly and effectively so that we can spend more days of our life living how we believe we were meant to live. To me, that's the only thing I have, is just the experience that I have while here in this lifetime. And I really want to construct that into the best way that I can imagine. To share this information, it's not so much about like getting my information out there. I just think, well, what if someone else is in my shoes that I was in 10 years ago? What information would they need to know in order to get to the life where I am now? Because I went from living in absolute hell and now feeling like my whole life and every possibility is completely unlimited. Now I get to wake up every day feeling like I'm living the dream that I had once imagined a long time ago. And it's not filled with money or woman or things, but it's filled with a sense of understanding who I am and being able to have my mind and body just work well, so that whatever I choose to do, that I can just do it easily and enjoy the experience while I'm doing it. That was my dream for so many years, and for a lot of people, they have other dreams. I know that. But when you lose your mental health, and for a lot of people, it happens inadvertently, eventually, as I've seen just from, the walks of life of many elders that I know. once people lose it, then they start to change their dreams. And when we're kids, I know that we want to be an astronaut or an Olympian or something like that. And then as we grow up, we want to make a lot of money and have a stable household and be proficient and respected in our industry. But then as people get even older, they just want, oh, well, I just want a working body and a working mind that doesn't hold me back from doing the things I truly want to do with my life. And I guess I got to go through this progression extremely fast because of when I was young, I didn't take care of my health very well, and then that surgery just kind of triggered whatever it was that was probably already damaged. And then from there, I got the full experience of losing my mind, losing my stability, losing my self-belief, and then having to struggle day by day to get that back again. And that is exactly what I do not want happen to anybody else. So I hope this information reaches you before you get to the point where you're stuck and you're trapped and you're confined within your own mind. Because once that happens, admittedly, I still have a long way to go on my journey and a lot to learn. And I think that goes maybe for all of us. I hope to keep improving my health, and I hope that along this journey that I'm able to share what I'm learning, and that's what's helped me as well as the others that I've helped in person reconstruct their bodies, so that you can better understand how to, if not be healthy, then to at least reconstruct each part of your body, whether it be an electrical channel, whether it be some biomechanical issue or an issue with the organs or the mind, that you can reconstruct it into the way that you want. I know that a lot of people are frustrated. They've gone to many doctors, they've read a lot of science, that they've tried a lot of different things to help heal themselves, but are not getting the results as much or as fast as they would like. And this channel is for you so that you can understand a more simple way, and that if at first all these treatments and therapies and health programs don't work, well, the last resort is just rebuild it. Because if you rebuild it, then it's impossible to have an issue still. Admittedly, it's a lot of work. It's not easy, it's uncomfortable. But that's why I say, if for you that uncomfortableness is at this point the only option to get back that vitality or bring your health back to where it once was, well, I guess we're in the same boat, and let's continue this journey to mental wellness together.